ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवरभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्कम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतः पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday evening Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. We have been reading his Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on the subject of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, between 1900 to 1950. This compilation has been done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajan ji, and we have now been looking at the question and answers put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950. And in a series of the questions that we have been looking, we will look at a collection of question answers and meditate upon it by Bhagavan's grace today. Following that, we will have a 20-minute Atma Vichara session, and then our President Sri Sarada Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in the Ramana Gita by Ganapati Muni, which is also a compilation of all the question and answers between Bhagavan and many devotees, including Ganapati Muni, which has been compiled in Sanskrit as Ramana Gita. And then we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan at the end. In today's question answer, it is the devotee's question about death. So we will look at it. Question number 49 to question number 56 is all the conversation that took place. So we will look at it completely. Devotee, does the I undergo any transformation, say in death? So the question is, does the I undergo any transformation, say in death? We may want to watch the devotee, and we may also want to watch how Bhagavan answers when we look at these question answers. In the devotee, we can see how he represents the jiva, the mind, which keeps jumping all around. And in Bhagavan's answer, we can see how the self, the unchanging truth, is. So, as I read the question answer, we can perhaps try to look at it. Devotee says, does the I undergo any transformation, say in death? Bhagavan says, who witnesses the transformation? Then the devotee says, are you speaking of Gnana Marga? Bhagavan, yes, it is. Devotee, but isn't surrender Bhakti Yoga? Bhagavan, both are the same. Devotee, have you realized God? If so, in what shape? Bhagavan, who remains there to see God? The question might well be if one has known oneself. Devotee, I have known myself. Bhagavan, is this I different from the self that you say you have known the self? Devotee, I know the self as identical with the body. If the self be different from the body, let Bhagavan tell me how to see the self separate from the body. Bhagavan says, why should the self be separated from the body? Let the body remain as it is. Devotee, does God have any limits? Bhagavan, leave God alone. What limits were there for you, for yourself, in your sleep? Devotee, death must then be the highest state. Bhagavan, yes, we are now living in death. Those who have limited the unlimited self have committed suicide by putting on such limitations. So we see here how the devotee goes through various thought process rather than the investigation. The mind always looks for a ready reckoner, a ready made answer to be given by somebody else. It doesn't want itself to find out. Yet, though the mind behaves as though it is ready to take an answer if somebody can give, even if an answer is given, it is not ready to accept it. It has its own questions. It is looking for an answer, yet it is not looking for an answer. This is the paradox of the mind that we deal day in and day out. And yet, Bhagavan shows that there is that self, that one self, which doesn't go through any transformation. So we will try to contemplate on it by looking at the question answer. Does the I undergo any transformation, say in death, starts the devotee? Bhagavan says, who witnesses the transformation? If there is an I, and if there is something that a possibility that one is thinking there is a transformation, and if there is something that transformation can happen and there is an event called death, to whom is all of this I, transformation and death appearing? Is the question Bhagavan is asking us to contemplate. The answer, if we were to stay with the answer, which is the question which Bhagavan has put, who witnesses the transformation? We truly find the answer. We see that the I is also an object. The expectation of a transformation from being something today to something else is also an object to the awareness. And death, an event, is also something that's not there, but it's going to come in at some point in time as an object. So Bhagavan is asking, why don't you care about the subject? Now, why are you caring so much about the I, the transformation, and the death? So he puts a counter question, which is the real answer for anyone if you want to really find the answer. But look at how the mind responds. Instead of looking at who wants to see the transformation, it simply jumps into a completely different question saying, are you speaking of Gnana Yoga? So it is already judging the answer of Bhagavan as whether it is a Gnana Yoga, and in the next question, but is it surrender Bhakti Yoga? In a way that it is continuously dividing and putting the problem elsewhere rather than seeing that it is the source of problem, the I, the ego itself, which is nothing but a thought in the mind, which is nothing but a division in the undivided truth, which is continuously jumping from its own multiple division, imaginary divisions, Gnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, transformation. And that's how it gets tired from morning till evening. And like the fox and the grape story, it will either conclude, in some many cases we have seen, oh, this man claims himself to be a gnani, but he doesn't know answer. So it will simply walk away. Things like that happens in all of us because that we don't question the questioner himself. We don't doubt the thinker himself, says Bhagavan here. So the devotee asks, are you speaking of Gnana Yoga? Bhagavan says, yes. But isn't surrender Bhakti Yoga? Bhagavan says, both are same. When we really contemplate, this question was put to me in my office recently. Isn't it Gnana Yoga and not Bhakti Yoga? I said, if one better than Bhakti Yoga, isn't Gnana Yoga better than Bhakti Yoga? Was a kind of question which was put. And I had to tell him that if I have devotion that Gnana Yoga is better than any other yoga or any other marga, isn't it devotion to something that I believe that is the only way? And if I believe that Bhakti Yoga is better than any other yoga, isn't that knowledge that Bhakti Yoga is better nothing but Gnana? Though we see that it is all nothing but consciousness that is appearing due to an imaginary division as I, when it rises from in the morning into this imaginary limitation which it puts on, though it is oneself, it puts on a name and a form and limits itself and creates innumerable divisions, and it thinks that Gnana cannot be same as Bhakti, Bhakti cannot be as same as Gnana. It doesn't want to stay with an answer. It wants to question everything, including its own thing, but never wants to question itself. We see the paradox, the way the mind or the ego behaves. Then the devotee asks, have you realized God? If so, in what shape? Again, he wants to know some object, and Bhagavan puts here, who remains there to see God? The question might well be if one has known oneself. It is like questioning back the object rather than try to see God as an object or something like that. And he says then, finally, he feels perhaps that Bhagavan will not let him until he tackles the question, and which is what happens. We try to jump around, and Bhagavan keeps coming back to the thinker, the doubter. Then he says, I have known myself. And Bhagavan says, is this I different from the self that you say you have known the self? Is the I and the self one and the same or different? Is a question. The clarity, it's like when I say 2 plus 3 is 5, and if I say, if somebody puts me a question, 2 plus 3 is what? And if I say it's 5, and he says, are you sure? And if I am not very sure whether it is 5, I may have, is it 6? Or I may put, is it 4? So Bhagavan here is asking, are you certain that the self that you are talking and the I is not different? Then the real enquiry, when it comes out, the questioner says, I know the self as identical with the body, which is what we all do. Take the body to be the self. When we accept it, he is doing so, and he says, if the self be different from the body, let Bhagavan tell me how to see the self separate from the body. Then Bhagavan says, why should the self be separate from the body? Let the body remain as it is. In the self, there is absolutely no division. In it being the pure being consciousness, it has never gone through any transformation. All our experience, whether it's an idea or a gross object like the body, it has always been through that consciousness. It always had the quality of existence, had the quality of the consciousness, the awareness. It's like whatever may be the ornament, but it is always made out of gold. Gold is the common thing which is there. So all our experience, if we scrutinize, whether it is the body or the mind or everything, when we scrutinize, we see that it is nothing but the self alone. So Bhagavan is saying, why do you want to see the self separate from the body? Let the body remain as it is. However, during the sadhana time, we may have to separate the mind, separate the thought, leave all of them to see that we are the pure being consciousness which never underwent the change. And from that state point, we see that all my experiences, which I was seeing as divisions of thoughts, body, gross, subtle, all of them is nothing but my own awareness, my own being consciousness, and that is the only way I experience it. Until I reach that, we need to continuously inquire. So then the devotee puts a question, does God have any limits? Bhagavan says, leave God alone. What limit were there for yourself in your sleep? All these questions, all this circus that we try to resolve and find a solution is only in the waking state, not even in dream perhaps, but only in the waking. In sleep, we are not aware. We are not aware of any limitation. And therefore, Bhagavan is asking this one fundamental question for us to ask. And then in doing so, we realize that, of course, we don't have any limitations in sleep. And finally, Bhagavan says, and the devotee says, death must then be the highest state. Bhagavan says, yes, death and death to all this limitation is definitely the highest state. And he goes on to make us realize that as long as we are living in this division, we are living in death. Those who living in division means the body might be there, the mind may be there, the intellect may be functioning, but it is all nothing but the self. We don't create a division. If we have an idea of a division, if we have a division, a perception of a division that this is body, this is mind, this is good mind, this is bad mind, this is nice to have, this is not nice to have, all those divisions, when all of this manifestation of that one self is there, Bhagavan says, then we are living in the death. He says, those who have limited the unlimited self have committed suicide by putting on such limitation. We can see that happiness is our goal, and definitely suicide is not an happiness, isn't it? Happiness, unalloyed happiness is our goal, and suicide is a pain at every moment. And Bhagavan goes on to make us see here that by holding on to limitation, we are in the unlimited self, where the self itself is everything. By creating a limitation, by creating the division, we are committing the suicide by putting on this limitation. And whenever this limitation rises in the form of a thought, that's how it starts fundamentally. So Bhagavan has bunched all limitation, as Nanda Kumarji says, into that one thing called thought, or the I, which is the fundamental thought. And therefore he asks, whenever a thought arises creating a division, a limitation, to diligently inquire to whom is this thought, who am I? And by doing so, we come back to the first and the foremost division called I, which is also a division to limiting the unlimited to the name and form. And when we inquire who am I and trace the I back to its source, we realize that we are that pure undivided consciousness, and having identified ourselves with that, we see that it alone has manifested in all these things without any division. And the division that we imaginarily held on to is the source of our suicide. If we let go the divisions, then the self alone is. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Namo Ramana. Over to Sharda Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the Self in all beings. By the immense grace of the Self, manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating in this satsang on verses from Ramana Gita. It has been some time since we met because we had a few events happening, some programs after a long time. And when we were last meditating on this Ramana Gita, we had been meditating on chapter 7. Chapter 7, wherein Karshni asks Bhagavan as to what is the form or what is self-enquiry. Rupam Atma Vicharasya Kimno. And what is the purpose or use of self-enquiry? Kim va prayojanaha. What is the use of self-enquiry? And Bhagavan had answered that self-enquiry is seeking the source of the I thought. Sarvasamapi vrittinam samashtivya samirita aham vritte ramushyastu janmasthanam vimrishyatam. In Ulladu Narpadu also, we have been meditating yesterday, day before yesterday, on the verse where Bhagavan asks us to find the source of the I thought. Here also Bhagavan is saying that all the thoughts are dependent on the I thought. Sarvasam api vrittinam samashtivya samirita. Aham vritte ramushyastu. Aham vritti is the support for all the thoughts. And janmasthanam vimrishyatam. Vimrishya, search, quest for the source of the I thought. Then Bhagavan goes on to say, Yesha Atma Vicharasya. This is only self-enquiry. If you want me to define self-enquiry, it is to find the source of the I thought. Na Shastra Parishilanam. So, it is not an analysis of scriptures. Here, we must understand that not an analysis of scriptures means not any kind of intellectual analysis. A scripture, of course, is the Upanishads, the Vedas, all that is scripture. Bhagavan's works are also scriptures. But for what purpose are we studying these? It is in order to get back to the source of the I thought. It is not to analyze the scripture itself. Because Bhagavan says such analysis is not tantamount to self-enquiry. Na Shastra Parishilanam Ahankaro Vilina Syat Moolasthana Gaveshane. So he says, in the earlier verse, he says, Janmasthanam of the I thought, from where does the I thought arise? And in this verse, he says, you can also look for the place, the source, into which the I thought merges. Ahankaro Vilinasyat. Into which the I thought merges. So, having talked about the merger of the I thought, then Bhagavan explains that once the I thought has merged in its source, what happens? He is reassuring that it is not an emptiness, it is not a void, because there is this doubt which has been raised by Paul Brenton and many others from time to time. They have raised this doubt, saying if we drop this I, if this I disappears, if this I which we know is destroyed, what will remain? Will it be a void? Will it be zero? Will it be a state where we become like idiots, where the mind does not function or is incapable of functioning? So Bhagavan tells us here, Atma bhasastvahangkara sayada sampraliyate. Now the ego, the I thought, ahankara, Bhagavan says, is Atma bhasaha. It is a reflection of the self. So when a reflection is removed, will the original disappear? It is not possible. So Bhagavan is saying, when the reflection merges in its source, Atma Satyobhitah Purnah Kevalah Parishishyate. The self alone remains in all its fullness. The self alone shines forth in all its fullness the moment the reflected self merges into it. In an earlier verse, Bhagavan had told us it is like the moon in daylight. Diva bhana bivaindavam. So, the original light, the reflected light of the moon, when it disappears into the sunlight in the morning hours, the daytime daylight hours, then what happens? There is no darkness. There is, on the other hand, the fullness of light, the entirety of light. So also here, Atma Satyobhita Purnaha, it shines forth in all its fullness. Therefore, Sarva Klesha Nivritti Syat Phalam Atma Vicharataha. Therefore, the fruit of self-enquiry is the solution for all ills. All ills. Sarva Klesha, Bhagavan has said over here. Sarva Klesha Nivritti. The fruit of Phalam Atma Vicharataha. Sarva Klesha Nivritti. It will destroy all anxieties, all sorrows, all fears. Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, Oru kodai neerar kove, Indraham puram iruvinai iral janmam inbu tunbu. There is no sorrow, there is no joy, pleasure, there is no fear. There is no inside and outside. All the dualities will cease, or all the dualities will get absorbed in the self. So it is Sarva Klesha Nivritti Syat Phalam Atma Vicharataha. Phalanam Avadhi Soyam Asti Netodhikam Phalam. There is no fruit greater than this. Nothing greater than this can be achieved. So there are two aspects which Bhagavan points out in this. One is, if we are suffering, if we want freedom from sorrow, if we want freedom from anxiety, if we want freedom from pain, then Bhagavan says, here is the answer. Because it is Sarva Klesha Nivritti. The fruit of self-enquiry is the destruction of all sorrows, all difficulties. So if we are seeking a solution to our problems, then here is the solution, says Bhagavan. If on the other hand we don't have any problem, then why should we be interested in doing self-enquiry? If life is comfortable for us, if there are no issues, if there are no conflicts at all, even within us, the rare kind of situation, but suppose that is there, then would there be no use of self-enquiry? Therefore, Bhagavan says in the second half, asti netodhikam phalam phalanam avadhi soyam asti netodhikam phalam. He says there is no fruit to be attained greater than the fruit of self-inquiry. So if we are happy, but if we are seeking something, if we are seeking some fruit through our actions, if we are seeking something, some fulfillment through our actions, then Bhagavan says we can comfortably drop all that and hold on to self-inquiry. Asti netodhikam phalam. Because no matter what we may search for, it is bound to be limited. And it is bound to be within the framework of time. So it will go away. There will be sorrow. It will be temporal. But here is the fruit of self-inquiry. Asti netodhikam phalam. And in case we feel tempted to get short-term goals, Bhagavan gives us not so much a warning. Bhagavan never encouraged practices which may lead to short-term goals, but nonetheless, he says, yes, we can practice some other paths if we need to, if we are used to it, if we feel comfortable practicing something else, then what we need to do is to understand that those practices also will not give us the complete fruition. Adbhuta siddhaya sadhya upayantarataschayaha taf prapnopi bhavatyante vicharenaiva nirvritaha taf praptopi bhavatyante vicharenaiva nirvritaha. Adbhuta siddhaya sadhya. We can achieve wondrous goals. We can reach wondrous heights by practices other than self-inquiry. So if we are seeking these wondrous achievements, we may take to one path or the other. So many achievements are there. And this is typified for us in the story of Arunachala, where both Brahma and Vishnu wanted to prove their own greatness. They wanted the siddhi, they wanted to show their siddhi, their capacity to attain the head or the topmost point of Arunachala, which was at that time appearing before them as a blazing column of light. They believed that they could see the beginning and the end. Such seeing is siddhi. If we think we are seeing something on the path, if we think that we have attained something, anything on the path, anything that is attainable and anything that is attained thereafter is a siddhi. That's an achievement. A siddhi is an achievement. So, Bhagavan is telling us that we can have any number of achievements. Adbhuta siddhaya sadhya. Upayantara taschaya. Yes, Lilama, I will let you know just in a moment. Taf prapto bhavatyante vicharenaiva nirvritaha. Even if you attain all those siddhis, ultimately release will come, enlightenment will come only through self-inquiry. Yes, Lilama? You wanted to ask something?
Sorry, it was by mistake.
It was by mistake. Okay. Okay. So, he says, Bhagavan says that vicharenaiva nirvritaha. Enlightenment, freedom can be achieved only through vichara. Vicharena eva, vicharenaiva nirvritaha. Adbhuta siddhaya sadhya. We can achieve various siddhis. So, siddhis, we keep on achieving things in life. So many things we achieve. From the beginning, a child born into this earth learns things, gets achievements. Small thing first, the child learns to suckle. Even that is an achievement because until then, the mother and child have to struggle. Like that, then the child will turn over, the child will sit up. In fact, in any home where a newborn is there, for every such achievement of the child, although it's a natural process, there will be some sweets prepared at home. Oh, the child has turned over, so today's one paisa will be made. Something else, the child has now sitting up, so something. The child has taken the first step, crawling, first step, walking properly, then running. Everything is a siddhi. The words spoken, they are siddhis. These are all achievements. These are all achievements which we strive for, we work for it. My mother would say, people work, people study, they go to school, first pre-nursery, then LKG, UKG, or nursery, LKG, UKG, 3 years there, then first to 10th standard. So 13 years of schooling are done by the time one completes 10th standard. Then there is 2 years of PUC, so 15 years. Then graduation, 18 years. Then post-graduation nowadays is almost a must. So 20 years of education, so much of what we think is a great siddhi. That's a basic education we think. And a great siddhi, great achievement at every stage. We receive certificates, we receive accolades, we receive whatnot. And everyone in the family is happy with our achievements, and we are also happy. This is just one academic line, and we may be parallelly achieving other things as well. And then we may get a job, a good job. We may do very well in it, keep on progressing from one step to another. Siddhis, adbhuta siddhaya sadhya. And then in the spiritual path also we may get siddhis, we may get samadhi, we may get visions. So many things are possible. But Bhagavan says, if one wants to be completely free of the ego, one has to take it back to the source and merge there and remain merged over there through self-inquiry. Vicharenaiva nirvritaha, says Bhagavan. He has given us the efficacy of self-inquiry in giving us what all we seek, the highest. He has given us the efficacy of self-inquiry in dealing with all our problems. And he has also told us that other things are okay, fine. They appear to be wondrous, but real freedom can come to us only when we abide in the self. Yes, Akashji, you have a doubt? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ram. Dileep can go on to the prayer.
Apara Satchit Sukhavadidashe Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami